If you ask somebody about their bag, they're like, oh, thanks, it's Chanel. If you ask somebody about the bracelet they're wearing, they will stop and tell you a 35-minute story about their grandmother, about their mother, about their aunt, about their best friend, about the promotion that they got where they rewarded themselves, about the designer that they met. It holds a lot of meaning. It becomes like a touchstone for us.
Welcome back to The Materialist. I'm Mark Bridge, the founder and CEO of At Present, Matchmaker to Extraordinary Jewelry, and I am your host. On today's episode, I'm joined by Sam Broekema, editor-in-chief of Only Natural Diamonds and a longtime force in fashion publishing. From Vanity Fair to InStyle, Sam has shaped the way we see style, and now he's turning his lens to something more enduring, diamond jewelry. We talk about what diamonds mean, why storytelling matters, and how editorial can still surprise and delight. It's a conversation about permanence, taste, disruption, and finding beauty that lasts. Welcome to The Materialist. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me. Maybe to begin with, you want to give us some sense of your origin story, who you are, and maybe some background on why we're chatting today?
I love calling that an origin story. It sounds very grandiose, but I am the editor of Only Natural Diamonds magazine. I work at the Natural Diamond Council. I've been doing that for 3 years. I launched a magazine 2 years ago. And before that, I was the fashion market director at InStyle. Before that, I did accessories at Bazaar. Before that, I was at Vanity Fair. And I got that job at Vanity Fair strictly on the basis that I am from Wisconsin.
There was a quota for editors from Wisconsin, and you were the only one who applied?
It's famous in New York, the New York-Wisconsin exchange. But no, the person that was in the intern assistant role before me was from Wisconsin. They were a really hard worker. And so when they saw that on my resume, they're like, okay, cool. All right. There you go.
Yeah. Better to be lucky than good in certain circumstances.
And I think that Midwestern work ethic, is something that is important to me. I like work. I like what we do. I love this jewelry world that we're in, and that sort of curiosity and wanting to keep finding what's next, keep searching.
And is it fair to say that you started off in the fashion world and then moved into the jewelry side of the fashion world?
Yes, actually, yes. I moved to New York because I wanted to work in fashion. I think fashion magazines were... Actually, the first magazine I ever looked at was Robb Report. And being a kid from small-town Wisconsin, I was just obsessed with these markers.
Where did you find that?
They oddly had it at the Cops Superfood store in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, at checkout. I haven't thought about how odd that is in terms of distribution, and I'd be curious to know from Robb Report how many issues they sold.
Yeah, I'd like to see the media kit for distribution in Oshkosh.
But I thought what was so interesting about it were all of these markers of taste, and this is the best boat. This is the best watch. This is the best cigar. This is the best cashmere sweater. And I thought, and it was questions of degree and of taste. And then I got into other magazines like Bazaar, Vogue, Vanity Fair. So when I moved to New York, I didn't know anybody. And I just found my way through meeting people to Vanity Fair. And I stayed there in the fashion department for 7 years, working me up from basically an intern to fashion editor when I left. And then went over to do accessories at Bazaar and got really an incredible education on jewelry from Glenda Bailey. She was really educated and specific and passionate. She's a collector, and also in very niche collections as well. And then I went over to InStyle because I was just so curious about this huge American force in editorial, and the idea that luxury can be democratized. I don't know that I've ever said that word before, but that mass can also be very good. And then when they closed print, it was a great opportunity to do something very different. I knew that I wanted to be in jewelry because my values had really shifted to something more permanent Fashion is really fun. It's a big business, but jewelry, as we were speaking about before, is something that lasts. It's something that the materials were here before us. They will outlast us. And what people can make with those raw materials is really special.
I want to go back. You've now painted this picture of the Robb Report in the grocery store in Oshkosh. In your family, in your house growing up, was this a complete departure from the world that you came from?
I would say in my family, travel was a priority, like seeing new things, expanding world. We traveled a lot when I was a kid. My parents really wanted me to understand like the scale of the world and all the different ways that there are to live in it. There was definitely the idea that you bought something once the right way and you weren't frivolous. We were talking about that as well. The idea of things being made well and buy a car well and then run it into the ground. I think that there are elements of that. Things being well made was important in my family. But again, I'm Midwestern, so it's certainly not about flashy.
Yeah. There's a difference between a Suburban and an Aston Martin.
There is. And the effect that it would have and what might people think. Who do you think you are driving an Aston Martin?
But there was something that was alluring there to you.
But those weren't the things that drew me in Robb Report. I would be much more the one inclined, like poring over a dissection of the Patek Philippe Calatrava. That is a very simple watch, universally recognized as perfect timeless design. But that's not the thing that is going to stand out necessarily if you're walking around the Cops superfood store.
Yeah.
As opposed to maybe other watches that are in there that are also fabulous and well made. But that wasn't what drew me in.
And so you go down this editorial path and see, I don't know, maybe you came in during the peak.
Is that a question about my age?
It's a question about the evolution of media, right? And I was thinking about the Graydon Carter book and the ebb and flow, and we live in cycles of disruption. And, all right, print was a big deal. That goes away. We moved to digital. And
I saw that whole evolution, and it was a really extraordinary time to work at Vanity Fair. Graydon was a very inspiring editor. He also gave an enormous amount of freedom. There wasn't an ad list being passed around. It was really about making the best
define
pictures.
that for people who don't know what that means.
Oh, great. An ad list would be, these are the supporters that need to be, the supporters of the magazine, those advertising in the front or the back of the book that need to be supported in that issue. That business relationship in some ways can complicate the editorial vision, maybe. So Graydon didn't care about that. I think we shot vintage on so many of the big covers. Vintage jewelry, vintage fashion. It was really about the apotheosis of this celebrity, just like being part of this moment where someone is elevated from somebody from Wisconsin, from Kansas, and now you're a movie star or you're touring, selling out concerts. That was really special. And then seeing things really creep in. And listen, magazines are a business, and that's really important. But that freedom and those budgets, I did watch them vanish.
Why did it vanish? What was the missing ingredient there?
I think that there are a lot of different reasons. There's never just one thing. I think the internet changed the game, and many magazines waited too long to jump on holding on to their identity. The New Yorker, I think, is a great example of a magazine that has done so and was quick to put up a paywall and pay or don't. I think people were giving away a lot for free and then only later asking people to pay for them. And once you've given something away for free, we know that famous adage. You're not going to lure them back in. I think, too, there wasn't always... I watched the digital editors come in and my best friend, Ruth Freelander, was a digital editor at InStyle, before that at Elle, and we were always very collaborative, but I think that there used to be a sort of church and state between the digital and the print teams, as opposed to supporting one another. And I think that we have to all rise up together.
And you are building a brand. This is not, consumers don't think about the channel in which they touch you being, why should we have a different identity if pick it up with the left hand or the right hand? But those are business model driven decisions.
And that's hugely important for me with our magazine. We started at digital only, and when I joined, I really felt strongly that we needed a print element. People need something tangible, but it needs to be high quality. The paper stock needs to be good. The photography needs to be exceptional. It needs to stop you in your tracks. You need to want to collect it. And then digital, it needs to also be beautiful, fun, but it needs to be fast. You need to be really responsive and inclusive. And it's part of the same puzzle of helping people learn, helping people explore, like why I wanted to become an editor is like that amazing power of making a tangible connection with a designer, loving something they make so much, you cannot wait to shoot it the most beautifully you can, and then putting it out there in the world, and then somebody buying it. That's just like the coolest connection with somebody that you don't know.
So having experienced the disruption in the editorial world, you say, all right, what am I going to do next? And the move is, I'm going to go into the business that is in the midst of another form of disruption.
I don't think that disruption is a bad thing. I think that in many ways, disruption helps us adapt and helps us think more creatively, helps us respond in new and creative ways. The world is always changing, even as it feels in many ways that it stays the same. I live in Connecticut where things don't change very fast. But jewelry is something that we have been adorning ourselves since before the first century. Actually, there are incredible things like of people in the Neolithic era, like finding pearls and making jewelry. That is really part of our DNA. That it's not all just self-sufficiency here. We're not just feeding ourselves. We're also wanting to create and express ourselves. And jewelry will continue to go forward whether or not there's a disruption in it. And it will just shake out about what our values are. I think that's what jewelry does. It really, what are your values? If you ask, and this is actually one of the reasons why I wanted to leave fashion, if you ask somebody about their bag, they're like, oh, thanks, it's Chanel. If you ask somebody about the bracelet they're wearing, they will stop and tell you a 35-minute story about their grandmother, about their mother, about their aunt, about their best friend. They have the same bracelet, about the promotion that they got where they rewarded themselves, about the designer that they met. It holds a lot of meaning for people. It becomes like a touchstone for us. I'm sorry for the cliche, but it's true. I think that I wear jewelry that is like very personal to me every day, that has been given to me by friends. And when I'm thinking, I tend to touch it and just reorient myself to, what do I believe?
I want to go back to the sort of founding of Only Natural Diamonds and you coming into it. There are a group of diamond miners who say, all right, we have a story that we want to tell. And this is a story perhaps that has been missing from the landscape. Were you there for that conversation about this is how we start telling that story, or did they bring you in once they had already decided this is the path?
The Natural Diamond Council has existed for many years before it was known as the Diamond Producer Association. So I think that idea of an organization that is in support of natural diamonds, that I definitely would not claim credit for being part of the ethos. But in terms of creating an editorial arm of it, where we are really able to be like brand agnostic, to really be all about really direct storytelling, like really bringing in incredible journalists that open up this world to the reader. Like that's something that I've been very much lucky to be on board with our amazing CMO and the whole team and CEO. I think that in terms of creating a magazine where we open up all the different parts of what's fascinating about jewelry, there's all of the different parts of why we are curious about diamonds and why we love natural diamonds, why we love diamond jewelry. There's the style aspect to it. There's the history, which goes back to the Renaissance, and before the Renaissance, it's just engagement rings. But then there's also like what communities are supported. like through the diamond mine producers and the environmental safeguards. I think we're all very concerned about like where the environment is going, and like doing all we can to protect both the communities and the planet.
The history of, I don't know if you would describe it as category marketing, but I think that's what I would call it. You had one major player for a long time that said, this is an object you need to pay attention to. And then for reasons specific to their business or the change in the world, they went off in a particular direction. And there was a gap for some time where no one was really telling that story of that product. Are you
What
kind of...
period are you thinking of specifically?
I'm thinking of the period from, 2000 to 2020. You have a bunch of changes in the marketplace. Obviously, De Beers goes from controlling 85% of the world's diamonds to less than half. And they start launching their own retail. They start launching their own brands. If we think about Beers Diamond Jewelers or Forevermark. And there's a whole generation of consumers that didn't see Dancing Shadows and the London Philharmonic playing jubilant music. And that period then led into the biggest supply side disruption that the industry has ever seen. So it's an interesting moment to come in and to start telling this story. I was going to ask, is there a rearguard action that you need to be engaged in here? But I guess that's not really the question. Do we just say, all right, we start anew and plant the seeds and start watering them for the next generation of consumers? Is there that sort of lost window?
I don't think there's ever anything that is lost, because as human beings, we're always taking on new information. I don't believe in this idea that people are fixed. I think that we have the opportunity to change, to grow, and that's the point of this whole thing, being on this earth, that we have the opportunity to change our mind, to grow, to develop, to gain more empathy, to have more curiosity about what we invest in. The idea that we are looking more deeply at, like, what is the real story of what we're buying. I think we're doing it with everything right now. I think particularly as a global force, like we're looking, like, where do things come from? I think we all want to be more educated. And I think that an educated person makes a more meaningful purchase as well.
I'm a fan of the jobs to be done framework as a way of thinking about products. I'm curious if you think that the job that is done by a natural diamond is different than the job that is done by a lab-grown diamond. Do they serve the same purpose? Do they serve a different purpose?
It's a very interesting question. They're very different, too, because there are a lot of safeguards that are put in place, making sure that local communities are supported by natural diamond producing, that the planet is left as it was before a mine is opened, that it is returned to nature once it's closed. With lab growns, they're all over the map. Largely they are made in factories using fossil fuels and in enormous quantities with not very many employees. So it's a different situation. Again,
but as a consumer, if I think about things that I want to buy and to bring into my life, I am very much personally inculcated in the traditional jewelry world. And as a child of the 80s, I got this sort of message. And so there was never any question for me when I proposed what I was going to buy, when I buy objects of significance for myself or for the people that I love. But there was a different meaning behind why you bought something. I talked recently with our mutual friend Sally Morrison about this subject, about what do these things do, and has that meaning shifted over time? There are differences in things that are rare. There are differences in things that are made by hand. There are differences in things that come from particular places. But how important is it that there's a signaling ability to that? And I'm just thinking about the sort of Rob Report conversation. This is a big natural diamond, and that is a communication of something. Is it important that somebody knows that I have a natural diamond, or is it sufficient that I know it for myself?
Listen, I think that one knows. I think that there is a rarity around a very large natural diamond that is a D flawless. And it is a very different conceit. I think that there is a real curiosity for people to know what is the long-term value of something, and those are very different propositions. Diamonds are rare; they are finite. We're not making any more of these. Certainly not in any of our lifetimes, and not because the forces that
just need a couple 100 million years in a volcano. It's not complicated.
We just need to make another Earth,
or go find one.
And it's interesting. My niece is getting engaged, and we were talking about all the different options that there are. And obviously, because of where I work, I'm uniquely armed with information. But I really didn't want to push her in one direction or another. And what resonated with her was, what does this symbolize? What am I trying to show here? Is this about trying to show how much money I have? This is a personal expression of love. And so the idea of the inherent value in something, that's what resonated with her.
I think that's true, but I wonder, I guess the nature of how we talk about the product is changing, and I guess that's why you have a job, and the way in which you are telling these stories is so important. When you think about the stories that you want to tell that reinforce those messages, what are the sort of virtues that you think about?
Unique, for sure, and surprise. I think that what is amazing about diamonds is that a single one is unique. And there's this idea that everything has to be perfect in the 4 C's. It needs to have a perfect cut, perfect clarity, like perfect color. And some of the most beautiful diamonds to me are like not a perfect color. Maybe they're super warm, or I love like a poky diamond, which has a lot
Define that.
Poky diamond, it has a lot of inclusions that give like a very beautiful crystalline soft feel to it, or a salt and pepper diamonds where they literally look like Dalmatians. It's nuts. And these are made by our earth. This is incredible. And so with the people that we shoot, the designers that we shoot, I want to find people that are pushing the envelope forward, people that are trying to think about things in a different way. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the most futuristic. Sometimes some of the coolest designers for me today are looking at all the classical antecedents and really looking back to how jewelry began and making it feel, fresh again.
Is it more about the way in which the product is used than the product itself? I feel like for a long time, diamonds were sold on the basis of the 4 C's. And you talk about, I bought a diamond. Maybe you'd say I bought a diamond ring, or maybe I bought a pair of diamond earrings. But is it really about the whole package? What role does design play? What role does the way in which something is presented?
I think there are 2 things there. I think that sometimes it's just about the diamond too. Like there's something that moves you about it when you look at it, when you hold it, and there's the way that it catches the light. It's mesmerizing. I remember when my sister got engaged. She's very matter-of-fact person in many ways, but she's it's just really sparkly. People, they simplify it to just these terms. I feel a certain way. But it is also what people do with it and transform it. I think that we've been working towards mastering and unlocking the light of a diamond, the fire of a diamond, if you will, like for centuries. And so there is some of that in there that is impressive. I can't believe that they did this. When you look at Van Cleef and Arpels, like with the mystery setting, like it's amazing that the diamonds can move that way.
What do you see when you look at the landscape that gives you a leading indicator that the message is resonating?
We're just seeing a huge amount of people going back to these sort of like heritage cuts. We have a feature in the next issue about all the old mine cuts, the rose cuts, the poky diamonds, because they feel natural, they feel imperfect. I think that like people want to show off, that this is a natural diamond. I think yellow diamonds are on fire right now because they're natural. I think that there's like people want to differentiate and be like, this is natural. This is something that our planet created, and this is a different value proposition.
And is that a message that resonates with different types of customers? Or when you think about who you're talking to?
I think we're talking to a lot of different people. Obviously, with Gen Z, it's a lot about authenticity. And I think as people learn more about natural diamonds, or if you want to talk about sustainability, like people are going to vintage diamonds. Like, what could be more sustainable than something that has been already cut centuries ago? I think that's very special. I'm a big vintage purchaser in general. Like, I like vintage. I like that things.
What is the appeal?
I like that things had a life before. Also, I'm rough on almost everything.
So if it's pre-roughed up,
if it's
you're like,
pre-roughed,
all right.
I feel
It seems like it's
more
probably durable.
I also have a 19-month-old, so there is a level of things are gonna happen.
Things are gonna be yanked.
Things are gonna be yanked. I'm gonna drop something, but I think there's a patina that something has lasted already. I think that that something is substantial.
Why a print magazine?
I think it's the same thing what we're talking about. I still love print. I still buy books. I can't look at a Kindle. It gives me a headache. I think that we want to hold on to things. I get exhausted looking at my phone. I don't love reading things on my phone. I do read quite a few Substacks, as we're talking about, because so many great friends of mine write Substacks, and they're great ones to read. But there's nothing like a book. There's nothing like a magazine. There's nothing like feeling like you're holding on to something tangible. It feels like a more genuine connection. I pay attention better. And it's interesting, for designers, for celebrities, models, they want to be in print. We have been lucky to book really incredible people for digital features, but the first question they always ask is, oh, is this going to be print?
That feels, oh, okay, then this is something that is special.
Yes. And it's funny, like when we were we were doing digital issues, and I kept getting asked, I was like, really? I just got laid off by a print magazine that decided to go digital. But there's still that draw, that allure.
What is the editorial vision, and how do you balance telling celebrity stories, beauty stories, product origin stories, ethical components when you think about putting together an issue or an edition?
Each issue has a theme. The upcoming issue's theme is responsibility, and I wanted to think about all of the different meanings that word has. We've done the rarity issue, where we really delved into what makes something rare. So with each one, I really seek to give the subjects, the teams, like a lot of freedom to surprise. I think that is the most important thing in putting an issue. Am I surprised? Have I not seen this person this way? We have a very iconic actress. That word gets bandied around a lot. I know the word iconic. She's been famous since she was 11, and she's now 59. I want to shoot somebody in a way they haven't been shot before. I think I want to shoot jewelry in a way that hasn't been shot before. I want to be surprised. I want to surprise other people. I think that's the challenge for me with each one.
When you think about casting, so you just described, here is somebody that we were excited to feature and to try to feature in a new way. What are the criteria that you think about? Oh, this is somebody who I want to represent.
Can't be a jerk. I think that I do.
There goes it. Makes it much easier.
It does make it a bit easier. No, I think that I really do think about what somebody's representing as well. What are the projects that they do? What are the things that they say? What's the philanthropy that they do? I think that's a hugely important part of life, of modern life. How are we giving back? And with each person, how are they different from one another? Each issue has to be a puzzle where you want to keep somebody moving through the issue. Like, oh, and then realize that they've been sitting still looking at a print magazine for longer than they would doom scroll.
Maybe not to the same degree that you do, but I love print publications. I carry around.
How can we make you love it as much as I do, Mark?
That I probably need for that to be my job for a year or two. But I lug around a bag of magazines whenever I travel. That's always my joy of being on a long flight, is to go through the stack of things. And I'm always looking for something that is new. But I'm not sure that I am a representative consumer of media. If I am in the newsagent, why do I pick up your magazine? Or maybe I should ask first, what is the primary form of distribution? I'm finding it in a jewelry store.
You're finding it in a jewelry store. You're finding it, if you fly Delta, it's in the Delta lounges, which which is a distribution that I really like. But we're also on more arty newsstands in New York, LA, London, and Paris.
That's where I saw it for the first time. I don't remember which one it is. One of the newsagents around here. I'm like, wait a second, Natural Diamonds magazine. Wait, this is beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I think that why you pick it up is that it doesn't look like the other magazine covers. That there is like a different scale that we like to use, because obviously we're jewelry, so you want to be able to see it. But I do really try to draw in like also the imperfection. I really want to get to the idea of who that person is on the cover as well. It's funny, I feel like one of the fights on set is always, I don't want any makeup on anybody. I just always want to really see what they look like. I think that's what I like to see. And then the title of the magazine being only Natural Diamonds, people get into it as well.
Say more about that.
I think that the idea of being natural, of not hiding, is really nice today. Almost everybody I talk to is pretty exhausted by the idea of keeping up looking young and going to the gym and eating the right stuff and drinking the right stuff and skinny pants, like I can't wear any skinny pants because then they'll know I'm a millennial. Is no joke. It's very clear that I'm not Gen Z. The idea of letting it go and being who we are naturally, I think is really compelling.
When you think about responsibility and sustainability in a world of luxury, are those two things in opposition to one another?
I don't think so. I think that to have something made, ideally, the person that is making it is fairly compensated. They're working in a human way. I think that responsibility is like being human in the way you work, thinking about the long term, supporting the people that help make it all possible.
You've talked about the number of people who are impacted by diamonds, by the value chain and the jobs that creates. Do you think about that when you think about your mission and the stories you're telling?
We have a story or two or three in every issue where we talk about the people in Canada, the people in Botswana, the people in Australia, the people that are, whose livelihood, the people in Sierra Leone. We have a story about artisanal mining, people that are literally out there as singular people making a good living this way. And I think it helps me feel good about where I work and what I'm doing.
Is there a risk that you tell those stories or the ecological stories and come across as preachy?
I think what's important there is that we bring in independent journalists for those stories as well, so that we can be unbiased.
There is this interesting question as to what is this? Is this an editorial publication? Is this an advertorial? Is this an infomercial?
Infomercial. You're really showing your age too, Mark.
Yeah.
No, I get. I
still have fondness for Ross Perot. That was
for sure. I feel like when you're reading the magazine, I can only read it as myself, but I know that as I put it together, when we're shooting big brands with the same level of real estate as independent brands, I think that is refreshing to the reader because it's not done very much. Most people are not able to do that. So in terms of the freedom that the photographers, that the writers have, I don't think that there's a question that it's editorial. And again, we're a nonprofit as well. So, we're not selling anything. We're just storytelling.
You have been a champion of emerging designers, and you used the term earlier, brand agnostic, to describe the storytelling. How are independent designers doing? It feels the biggest voices in the room continue to get bigger. The icons continue to take up the space. Is there a place, and what role do those independent designers make?
It's interesting. I was having this conversation with the designer Nikos Koulis, who's a Greek designer, and he's just had his largest high jewelry collection ever. He has a very one might even say rabid fan base of people he cannot literally make enough jewelry to sell because people want it so much. And he's doing really well. I don't think it's possible to say across the board that independent jewelers are doing one way or another, because I think that people's experiences are across the board. I think it can be harder. It's an expensive business to be in. The raw materials are expensive, the production is expensive, and you really do have to have a strong point of view to succeed today. And I've always loved independent designers. I like to be surprised, and I like to be discovering. I like to find people. I think one of the things I find annoying about your Instagram, Mark, is that there are brands that I don't know that I'm constantly. But I was like, oh, that's great. I'm not annoying, but
you had told me that at one point. I said that's the best compliment I've gotten in a long time. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
For me, for the people that I work with, we're all really curious, and so to find somebody that is doing something different, it feels really special. And I think that those people that stay the course and keep to their sort of intuition, they do well. But yeah, I don't think it's possible to speak across the board for that many people.
Other than my Instagram, which we know is the number one place for the discovery of new brands, where else do you find new voices?
It's a lot through friends. People reach out on Instagram to me. I get a lot of DMs from new designers. For me, I think it is a lot. Unfortunately, it is a lot on social media. Maybe that's why I'm so excited to spend time with a print magazine. Because so much of my time is spent searching online. It's really just the only way. I relate to it like as somebody from a small place. We didn't have that opportunity to see the world in the same way. I think the internet wasn't as robust in terms of like places to search, and today, like, you can be in touch with designers all across the world every day. Yeah, it's really special.
One of the things that I appreciate about print, and about your print in particular, is you get somebody's perspective. And I think one of the challenges with the platforms and the algorithms is it feeds you what it knows you already want. And there was an idea that was popularized a couple years ago about the sort of inshitification of the world. Did you see this?
I have not seen it.
That the force of the algorithms is basically pushing us down into the blob of lowest common denominator. This is the end of entropy here. And I worry that just leads to more of the same. And I think you then don't get that surprise. You don't get the delight. And everything starts looking increasingly homogenous. I think that this force, which has the capacity to provide for such a diversity of voices in the way that it's been used, it may actually be doing just the opposite.
I think that SEO, search engine optimization, like, this is something that is really important, to give people what they're looking for and then give them more, give them next. Obviously, we have a website where we get a lot of traffic through SEO search terms and like answering the question that people are coming to ask, or coming to have answered. But then you have to keep them there to surprise them. Like, oh, I didn't know this. Oh, I didn't know that. And then soon, like, they're 3 stories in, or they've landed a completely different part of the site of what they were looking for. I think you can't just answer the question. You have to do and next, and past it.
In the people that you work with, how do you think about the balance between established celebrity? You work with a lot of top-tier talent, and then there are all of these other voices in the kind of content creator world, in the Substack world, in the Instagram world. How do you balance the people who have the attention of the audience?
I think that there's like that anchor, right? With our next issue, like, we have a famous actress on the cover, and then we have 2 independents alongside that maybe you don't know, or that look familiar. I think, again, it's all about balance. That idea of surprising and delighting. I think a lot about Barney's when I'm putting an issue together, like old Barney's. It was when I first moved to New York, it was like, that was fashion to me. And their whole idea was like taste, luxury, humor. And a little bit of bad taste can be great taste. A little bit of giving people like what they didn't think they wanted, in terms of an idea or a taste, or introducing them to something like, oh, this is a sort of whole genre I wasn't aware of.
I agree, and that turned out to not work as a commercial prospect. Why is that?
What do you mean it didn't work out as a commercial? What are you thinking about specifically?
I'm thinking about Barney's, which went bankrupt
Barney's
3 times. That here is the place that everybody agrees was the temple of discovery and created careers for so many people, and everybody still thinks about with great love. Didn't work.
It didn't work. It worked for quite a long time, and I think that there's a separation of the inspiration from the business too. I'm not close enough to their business decisions to be able to speak to why it didn't work, but it certainly did work for this kid from Wisconsin, where I really felt inspired, enveloped, and driven to search. I will say the other reason that I really liked it there was that I could go across all the floors and not be asked by anybody what I was looking for something, and go to Fred's and eat just French fries and a iced tea, and nobody would bother me. Maybe they should have been trying to get me to spend more money.
Yeah, this question there, is that a success or a failure? But
it was a success for me because I could afford to go and explore, but I wasn't really supporting their bottom line.
The fries were slightly more attainable than the suits.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's what we were talking about before. Like, you do have to balance giving people what they want with the surprise and delight, and I think that maybe you can lose that balance a little bit too. Jewelry is interesting. It's expensive. I don't know. We don't always want to focus on that part of it, but it is precious. And so...
Is that a feature or a bug?
Everybody can't afford to buy a new piece of jewelry every day. And so there's just like a different way of talking about it. It's the long game as opposed to selling sneakers.
It's one of the reasons why I like the diversity of material offerings that are available today, because you can play in the space more often. And if it is only a purchase that you make 6 or 8 times in a life, the market is too small. I think that one of my founding philosophies for At Present was jewelry as a category has too small a share of wallet for what it deserves based on its emotional impact. And I think the reason for that is we've done a bad job of communicating what these things do. It has become obligatory, or it became obligatory for certain purchases. All right, if you want to get married, if you want to celebrate a round number birthday or anniversary, okay, then you're welcome to come into the category. But for all of these other things, we ceded the territory to shoes and handbags and travel and hospitality. So I don't know, like I am a believer that you need to have things that can be quick hits. And I don't know, a lot of the people look at the things that we're selling, they're like, why are you selling blown glass fruit? I'm like, because it's fun, because it's an opportunity to enter into the space and have a little bit of adornment. And we're not pretending that this is something that you need to keep for 3 generations. I just play with this balance between it is so precious and it is so important that I can only come into this category very infrequently, and I think that's limiting.
I think that's a really excellent point. I was just looking down, like, some of the jewelry I wear is not hugely expensive because it's on a silk cord or it's very small and more personal. I think that it's true. Like, their jewelry should have a much larger scale or like market share in luxury, because fashion definitely outsells it. I think it's getting better as people are beginning to feel confused by what they're actually paying for. When a handbag is more expensive than a bracelet, this seems wild, you know? And I think people are wanting to mark occasions with jewelry for themselves, and I think more and more people buying for themselves, that there's a real power in that.
Agree entirely. As you look out at the landscape, are there brands, designers, people who you think deserve more attention than they get?
I think that some of the people that I love the most have been doing this for quite a long time and are quietly making have a beautiful community around them. I'm thinking specifically of 10,000 Things. David and Ron are such creatives and have like really stayed true to their design aesthetic, and they obviously have had quite a bit of recognition, but I still think like for people who have like really created, it's very difficult to create something new in jewelry, and they really do every time, and they're very thoughtful about everything that they bring and every inspiration. I also think that their friend and my friend, Sarah Beltran at Dezo, is somebody who has like a really strong visual identity, both in terms of her interior design, which is like chic as hell, and her personal style, her jewelry. It's very recognizable. I wear one of her bracelets every day, and people who know always know immediately. And if you don't know, it
can be a talking point.
It can be a talking point.
Yeah.
I think that she's somebody that I'm routinely surprised is not more well known because she's so talented. And then also, I think that we're in a time that there is a lot more curiosity in brands that I think people don't know they do. Like I think about like James Givenchy, like he's super well known, but I didn't know about him as well until probably Scarlett Johansson got engaged. But it's an amazing time we're living in. I know you were talking about there being a lot of external forces, but people are doing really cool work. People are responding so creatively to the challenges they find themselves, and also doing things that haven't been done before. It's amazing.
Let's leave it at that, because that's where the joy lives. That's the creativity, the sense of discovery. I think that's one of the many things that we both share. Sam, thank you. If people want to find you, if they want to find Only Natural Diamonds in the physical world or in the ethosphere, where do you live?
So we're at Only Natural Diamonds on Instagram, naturaldiamonds.com on the web. The magazine is also, we do a digital version there, and then we're in Casa in New York, Al's and Book Soup in LA, also Iconic in New York. There's quite a few other ones that annoyed me for not remembering off the top of my head, but and then also in Delta Lounges worldwide.
And in the finer jewelry retailers.
And in the finer jewelry retailers.
Hopefully near you.
And all of our amazing retail partners. Yes, nationwide.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure.
That's it for this episode of The Materialist. If you enjoyed this conversation with Sam Broekema, please take a minute to rate, review, and subscribe. It helps other curious materialists find us. You can follow The Materialist wherever you get your podcasts. And for more stories about style, substance, and the things we carry, head to our Substack or visit us at atpresent.com. Until then, The Materialist is a presentation of At Present, matchmaker to extraordinary jewelry. We'll see you next time.